Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Facebook Live with myself. And today I have a special guest, JV Queen, Mandy Branham. She is, honestly, her energy is so amazing. I talk to her on the phone so much, and her energy that I get is what I want to bring to you guys tonight. And why not, take it from a phone call and just bring it on Facebook Live, just so we can have a random chat to keep you guys entertained through lockdowns through Ontario. Because I'm telling you, it doesn't feel like we're ever going to get out of this lockdown. You get out of you got out of one, but then you go back into another one, but we don't remember even being let out of the other one. So it's we're all going crazy. They said to Mandy before we went live, and I'm like, it's Thursday, right? Is it Thursday? I'm like, yeah, it's Thursday. Okay, it's like Groundhog Day. Thank you, Mandy, so much for coming on and doing a Facebook Live with me and letting the members know and who you are and what you're all about. Awesome. Tell us about who you are and what your skills are.
Well, I'm Mandy. I'm locked into my studio at 474 Forest Hill Court. If you want to come and save me, no. I'm going a little cuckoo by the end of the day. I'm a rule follower, but yet there's times that I realize that I don't like the rules. So I kind of create my own rules. Yes. You know what? I am a full-time investor. I would almost class myself a mid-size landlord now, or a rental housing provider. I started investing seriously back in 2014. We just kept acquiring assets, providing housing. I'm a bit of a house hoarder. I don't sell. I don't sell a lot unless it's what's best for what presents itself as good for my portfolio or for a partner. I do invest with a lot of passive investors. It just kind of was a way to be able to say, hey, I don't want to have to deal with all the landlord stuff. I don't want to have to deal with tenants and toilets and Mandy, you're getting really good at what you do. Why don't we just partner? So honestly, a lot of this landlord stuff does come on my shoulders. We provide superior property management for all of the assets that we buy. I've got a couple property management companies in a variety of different cities, and we actually only manage our own properties, which is kind of one of those why don't you manage for exterior people? But it's just enough of a enough juggling and making sure that the tenants that we have, the relations that we have are all in kind of good standing. And so, yeah, that's me. I'm a full-time investor.
That's the part where I think we dive really deep into what landlords are and what we put up with. And then we don't really take into consideration our property managers. I want to take a moment right now and appreciate all of the property managers out there, because I literally became one a year ago. And I was bugged for 10 years. And they're like, Kayla, do property management. You do great. I said, no. Sometimes landlords are difficult to deal with than tenants. And then when Bill 184 came out, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's really shake up. Let's make sure that we don't have to go to the landlord and tenant board. Let's help these landlords out locally and help them get the right tenants, so we can actually help them manage that portfolio in a way that, it doesn't have to go to the landlord and tenant board. But you get to see that you're being in the middle. You be a landlord, and then you're in the middle. And then, of course, I was a tenant once upon a time as well. My family are tenants. So I like to really get a diverse grasp on any type of level of entitlement, and when we're trying to give solutions. Now, Mandy, when you've been a landlord and property manager since 2014?
Yep. Yeah, we had one property that we individually managed ourselves, one property for 7 years leading up to that. But 2014, we went and started our first company.
Now, what was your biggest pain in the butt? What's the biggest thing that you came down to understand that the rules are totally tilted against the investor? Was it on a development side of thing? Was it about the landlord and tenant board? What would you say would be doing what you do? What's the most difficult part?
As an investor, I enter the room as an investor. I describe wearing my investor hat. So I filter the world as an investor. But there are times that when you're dealing with humans and houses and situations, whether that be Yeah. And you're trying not to be greedy, but yet you are, describing to. So I'm in the middle of conversations with, I'll say in the middle, except the conversations are over, gentleman right now. And he's like, I've got a deal for you. He owes us 7,500. Court date not till June. He won't sign a payment arrangement, nothing. This was his offer. I'll give you $5,000 and you write off the other 2,500, but I won't tell you when I'm going to pay the $5,000. And I'm like, he's like, you don't need any money. You don't need any more money. You're making enough money as it is. And I'm like, see right there. There are times that you want to slam down and say like, dude, that's why I do this. Like, I do this to make money. But then there's that human side that you're like, but this is your home. How can we work together? So I think that's been one of the hardest things, is to be, kind of, do I give leeway on the late payment fee? Do I give, like, when do you give leeway, and when do you realize that someone's just trying to take advantage of you, and be a human, but yet realize this is a business and you have to treat it as a business. But yeah, one of those times that you just put your human aspect first, your front foot forward as a human, and go, these people are struggling. There are lots of circumstances that have kind of led to their situation. So for me, I think it's really trying to find the balance between helping somebody and not being walked all over or taken advantage of or let it go too far. Why didn't you give the N1? Why didn't we give the L1 on the 21st of the month, or whatever date it was, now that we're putting things in the mail? Like, why didn't go, well, they said, and here we are 4 months that they haven't made a payment, and they're still like creating this sob story. And then you're just like, then you feel like the big bad person. You're like, gosh darn it, give them the L1 so that we can keep the process going, but so that for me is definitely the hardest to teach or share or put in a manual. We're creating a property management company manual. Well, where do you put in there, have a heart, but don't let it get walked on, or listen to what they have to say, but don't get dragged along by their excuses, like.
This is where you take their situation, and being a property manager, being a landlord, and collecting the rent, and having natural correspondence with that tenant, and doing the inspections, and really getting to know that tenant. You can really understand when they are taking advantage of the situation, or when they're going to need financial help. And if you look up any type of service manager from the government, you can Google service managers of rent relief. You're going to be able to find that link that you can give to your tenant, and they have to take that initiative. I would love the fact for landlords to be able to pull that rent relief, but it's obviously up to the tenants, and it's going to be up to the landlord to bring that information to the tenants in a way for them to get access to that relief. And if you see them doing that, they're actually going to be they fit the criteria to be qualified for that money, and they're in financial hardship, and two, you're able to work with them. But if you have someone that's not willing to work at a payment arrangement, you have no one that's willing to look for any type of rent relief programs, or the Canada Recovery Benefit, or the portable housing benefit, and they're just wanting to stay there without paying rent, and maybe even buying extravagant things at the same time, obviously that makes you want to go full speed ahead, follow your paperwork. But it's about having that rules and procedures in place for your own private portfolio, knowing that, working your communication with your tenant, reminding them rent is due. And if they don't correspond back with you, this is about giving them the proper notice, and be like, hey, I know you're going to pay me. I just have to give you this N4 notice. This way it protects me, and it also helps you if you do need to seek rent relief elsewhere. So it's really about that customer service level of how we get to speak with them. Now, have you actually had to deal with the landlord and tenant board yourself?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, what was your experience there? Now, was it through COVID, before COVID?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I've been there during COVID. I had dates set for the end of March that were extended out by, that went from, we were supposed to be in court end of March, early April, and I didn't get a court date until the end of October, November for those dates. So we did lose, probably about $30,000 over our entire portfolio for 2020. My experience, it was sad. One of them didn't show up. She was gone. She just left. I think she was addicted to some drugs. And so anyways, when the paperwork came, she knew she had a date. She just left. She didn't show up to court. So that was an easy one. The next one, gosh, and these are the situations that you put yourself in and you're like, no, this is a business. But this lady had mental health issues, major mental health issues. And the outpatient was unable to take her during COVID. So she was actually stuck at her house. Her Ontario disability check, which she had been on for years, she'd lived in this unit for 8 years with no issues, and then something had gone on for her to have her check cut off, and so she had nothing. So she didn't pay me at all, zero, nothing for all of 2020. And we show up, and what does the adjudicator say? Do you see any reason why this lady should not be, it should not be acted on for her to go? And I was like, she doesent have a place to go. She's unable to give me a payment plan because she literally has no money being able to come in. They're not going to be able to pay for back owing rent. And so the adjudicator actually asked me if it was going to put me in hard times, if she could stay for another 3 months, and then she would move into her daughter's unit. Her daughter, that was it. That was going to be the last thing. And it ended up that she left December the 1st and she went to move in with her daughter. Now, in with her daughter, this is a mentally ill lady moving in with her daughter who was already looking after her sister's child. So it was like this big mess. And, you say to yourself, does that really matter? Why am I making their problem my problem? But then, this heart, you feel like the Grinch at the end of The Grinch That Stole Christmas. His heart just kept getting bigger and bigger, his chest. Well, there's that side of it that you're like, well, this is really kind of crappy. Now, keep in mind, let me share, this was in an 8-unit apartment building. We had all 7 units that had not missed any of their rent. So this was the only one. So I'm describing my situation because I want somebody to think, this wasn't a single family home. This was the only lady that had lived there, or it wasn't a duplex. And this is 50% of my rent that wasn't getting covered. So this was 1/8 of a building that wasn't being paid. But it was very straightforward. We had all of the information that we need. We know to cross our T's and dot our I's to be able to show up. We're very professional when we show up. And the adjudicator, as much as she was worked off her feet, was very, she listened to both sides. It was a very difficult case. She kept putting it off to the end. My tenant did go and have the consultation off to the side, which certainly delayed it. That's when they came back and said, we can't make a payment plan. There is no money. There is no payment plan available. So it was just a question, do I go after her in small claims court? Can you get water from a stone? Nope, probably not. So we just kind of let it leave at that.
So how long did she stay? Was there an order that was granted? They give her extra days, or did they give you a standard order?
They gave her extra days. So this was the end of October, very end of October. And she'd asked if she'd have until January 31st. And she was gone December the 1st.
Wow. And
so her daughter moved her out early.
And she didn't have access to any type of government funds, rent relief programs, nothing that she went after in order to try to stay inside the home.
We offered her everything that we could. And again, other than doing it for her, we talked to her daughter in July. I talked to her daughter and I gave her all these things. Again, I feel that people were just really overwhelmed last year. And so nobody could comprehend what they needed to do and the help that could have come. And yeah, so.
Wow. Now, how long were you waiting to get that hearing again from start to finish?
So she stopped paying me in January and was gone December the 1st.
Wow. Wow.
So
See, and this is not going to be like a lot of our solutions. We need to think of solutions that really help good landlords and good tenants and taxpayers. But we do have this section of citizens that we need to help, people with mental health, people with addiction. And what does that look like? Right. I know that we have many government programs that really try to work with private investors to try to get private investors to take people on the waiting list, people who are struggling with mental health and addiction, to get them on that path of recovery. But because so many landlords have taken on that program, and the people who they've gotten accepted for their rental starts to make problems for the other tenants that are at that unit. And that's where a landlord now feels like, I wanted to help out, I wanted to try that program, but now I have my other tenants, threatening to leave or threatening to take me to court if I don't address that type of issue. And I think we go back into, again, the landlord and tenant board. We have so many different type of forms. You have N1, N5, N7, N8. Like, you kill a tree just to try to fill out a lease agreement these days. But it's almost like a portal needs to be opened up for the landlord and tenant board, where a landlord and tenant can upload the entire relationship, something that can give the adjudicator or a mediator so much information, so that before we even have to go to the landlord and tenant board to have a hearing, at least they have a very big understanding of what happened, what communication landlord and tenant tried to do to work with each other, and also getting that mediation to the landlord and the tenant before the hearing even needs to happen. But instead,
let me ask you, if you were approached as a property manager with somebody, who has a worker, and the worker is saying, I have supports, do you evaluate, again, no discrimination, somebody's looking for a 1-bedroom, you're evaluating a variety of different tenants. Do you evaluate that person and the unit that you're looking to be able to put them into? And do you so again, as a property manager, you're evaluating who this person is on all of their, on the same way that you're evaluating another application and another application. But how do you look at them and go, does this person fit in the building? And you're thinking of the other 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, depending on the size of the building. Does this person fit with the building? And if they do, are they going to be noise, or are they going to help or hinder the building?
I think this goes back into that there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of different type of issues. And I think it's about really trying to see what kind of supports they're coming with and what kind of understanding they have of the rental unit. Because for us, looking at someone, like, it all depends on what kind of program, because the program that the government wants to give you now, they say the rent is guaranteed, the maintenance is going to be covered, and they're going to give you a mediator. And sometimes it sounds really good, but what happens is that when the tenants do start to become a problem at the tenants, either a problem with other tenants or honestly just a problem to the landlord. You know how we have tenants that complain about everything? Like, absolutely everything. That's usually what drives the landlord nuts, is just that it's small little things that they're trying to get addressed. Meanwhile, it's something that doesn't need to be addressed at that time. So if we have a tenant right now, let's say that there's mental health issues, there's now a dog, right? We have a dog in a house. They're obviously not taking the dog out for walks. The dog is using inside of the house, and the dog is using outside on the deck underneath other tenants. Now, bringing that to their attention to say, listen, this is not cool. I need you to address this within the 7 days. Here's your N5 notice. But now what that tenant does starts putting blame on other tenants in the property, stating that they are now being harassed by other tenants in the property. So it's not about, they're redirecting the problem. And that's usually what happens when you have a problem with them and you're trying to address that issue with them. That tenant will redirect. But it's all about what that unit is, what the cost is for that unit, how much these people make, and can they qualify, and do they have wages that you can actually garnish. That is what is boiling down to be. Why? Because the system is so broke. I recently just had a meeting with the region of Waterloo, the director of housing, explaining to him what this life is all about for landlords, how the landlord and tenant board is so broken that even with all these years of trying to get them to change it, and now going through consultation, and those problems still exist, we're still seeing the risk is too high. So we have to fix that RTA. We have to fix the LTB in order to make it not so scary to take people on different type of programs. Because I said, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, you have to do it, because in order to identify the issue, you really need to understand the root causes. And that's what we tried to fix. And that's why they said, I totally agree with you. I said, so we have to get ourselves into a program that is really appealing to landlords. I told them, like, way back in the day when we got into rental units, every landlord would take everybody on OW and ODSP. And you know what? I have people on OW and ODSP units,
absolutely.
Right? But when there's some people who are abusing it. And this is what I said to the region of Waterloo. I said, listen, I had this 1-bedroom apartment. They had a guy, a girl, they're coming, they're taking a look. Oh, I said, it's just for the two of you. And it's like, oh, no, it's just for him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's a roofer. He had his company truck, everything checked out, no problem. Seemed like a great guy. Gave him the lease, no problem, filled it out. And then rent was coming in, no problem. The guy never moved a stitch of furniture into that unit in 5 months. And I'm like, why didn't he move in? He only wanted the paper. He wanted the lease to show housing that he lived elsewhere, because his girlfriend lived in housing. He was living with her. So they must have come underneath inspection stating that he is living inside of that property, paying rent geared to income, which was probably really cheap. And now he had to prove that he lived elsewhere. So you have people that you need to help, and then you have people who are abusing it. And that's what we need to try to find out. How do you determine which ones need help, which ones are abusing it, and is the government programs going to provide that support in order to help landlord and that individual person who needs help? Can we work them together? But you can see on the YouTube channel that we have one of our landlords who took on that program. And it was a nightmare for her because of the concept that there's no protection, there's no rights for her. So how do they expect the private sector to help them deal with the needs of the people, which those needs are growing every day, especially with COVID? We have more people getting into more substance abuse that's happening. And that is obviously going to roll itself into this industry.
And that's, I think that's really important to touch on right now too, because we had a tenant, bless his heart, his e-transfer question was always, what is my favorite holiday? And the answer was Christmas. So like, you kind of have this idea of who this gentleman was. That was his question. What's my favorite time was Christmas. Well, he started to volunteer at a shelter, met some people, got addicted to drugs, had those people start to stay at his house. When we finally got him out, he was in jail. We, like everything, the cops were there. It was filled with needles and whatnot. And some, so there's this part of you that go, well, how did you let that person into your unit? And, your heart kind of hurts a little bit to be like, he wasn't always like that. Like, that's not who he was when we met. And again, he was a tenant of ours for 2.5 years before this happened, didn't miss a day of rent. And you can slowly see them declining to be like, what's up? He's never late with his rent. Yeah. He's never been like this. So I think that during COVID, it might be an eye opener. But again, are these the conversation that grocery store owners have to be like, hey, Kayla, the owner of IGA, and Mandy, the owner of, Superstore. Well, yeah, like this couple that comes in, yeah, there's some bad things. So, let's just have them not pay for their groceries this month. Like no other businesses have to have these conversations because the government, the LTB, they do not see a landlord as a business that is providing something the same way that they do see other businesses. So
It's
That's
exactly,
difficult.
and it's true what you say there, because when you see someone who is inside of the shelter system and you see that they're struggling to do better for themselves and you want to help that person out, but what happens is that when they've been on the streets for quite a period of time, they create a family, and then because that family helped them on the streets, when they finally get positioned into homes, now they feel they need to help out that person, and now you're having like almost like mini shelters being inside of your apartment buildings, which is obviously going to interfere with the reasonable rights of other tenants. So how do you prevent that when the landlord and tenant board says that you cannot, address another tenant moving more people into the unit unless it's over the bylaw with overcrowding? So you get to see that, and we want to kind of look at this as a whole. And that's why before, when I first started advocating, it was raw landlords, like raw landlords, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was like, why ain't I getting anywhere? So I had to sit back and I'm like, okay, let's look at it from a landlord's, let's look at it as a taxpayer, let's look at it as, the tenant, and us as a government in whole. Like, what can we do to change it in order for them to listen to us? Because right now with the government, every eviction that gets happening, the government does have this responsibility where they put people into motels and hotels, and they're going to be charging taxpayers $3,000 a month in order to house people inside of these shelters in motels and hotels.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when it was. Oh, it was like February, March last year, just before everything went down. We got a sheriff eviction. We had a tenant that left. And interestingly enough, go get this one. So he probably owed us about $5,000-$6,000 from 2019, coming early 2020. Did not get affected by COVID. And then but the house was a disaster, like complete disaster. So we totally renovated it top to bottom, which happened during COVID, all that. But interestingly enough, our property management, again, remember, we only manage assets that we ourselves have. A worker called our company and said, hey, I have a client and he has 2 children and he just, he's looking for a new place to live. And my property manager's like, who are you calling about? He had gone to them and they were seeking a unit for him. And so my property manager was like, wait a minute here. Is this, Mr. So-and-so? And they were like, yeah, actually, that's who it is. And he was like, we're the ones evicting him because he owes us this much money. Why are you helping somebody who couldn't even pay us? So now they're backdooring it to you guys being, helping him get new house. You're just going to fandangle into somebody else's unit. That is gonna, so they're not gonna call the previous landlord if there's a housing resource worker that's there first, as that person. So that was one of those really weird angles that we had. We've had a couple other eye openers that, people have presented themselves with a worker, and we're like, that's fine. But if the tenant can't fill out the rental application for a variety of reasons, we understand that. We would like to talk to them. We don't want to talk through you. And in this case, our tenant would never have called us for a unit because he knows he's getting evicted from one. He's badmouthed us on 3 different platforms, but hilariously, his worker calls us to say, do we have a unit? We're like, oh, people.
Well, you have to fix your system first, and then we might be able to get some units, just like the way that people are saying, with OW and ODSP, the rent is guaranteed, but the tenants can actually reverse that and put it back into their bank account. And we've said that to our elected officials about that's like a downhill spiral, like they redirect it because they're having a dispute with the landlord, and now all of a sudden they got themselves in arrears. Now they're tapping into other government services programs to get them bailed out of that arrears, and we have that system where now they're being evicted, right? And it's going to be more cost of the taxpayers. I'm like, why don't you make it where it goes to the landlord and only an N9 or an N11, or preferably an N11 can actually stop that payment from coming to the landlord. But again, what is that shelter rate for people that are receiving social assistance? It has to go up a little bit, but it can't go up too much, because then there's no initiative to get off the system, just like there's no initiative to get out of government housing. Once you get into government housing, that's it. You're there for life. It's an easy peasy type of situation happening.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What are you finding with landlord tenant board times right now? What is your suggestion to somebody such as myself? I mean, we've got a couple that we're waiting on. I would probably tell you just in the last 2 weeks, we've received 3 that we've been waiting for since December and early January. So seem to be a little bit of an uptick of court dates, but they're still end of June, July. So what do you share? What are you seeing as an overall kind of thing going on right now with LTB timelines?
They definitely have sped up their process of getting these hearings actually booked, which is a good thing. They also see that from new bookings, in certain areas, you're looking at around the 5-month mark versus 14 months is what we're looking at. But even though we get that hearing date, and that's what I see is happening, we're getting the hearing. But what happens at the adjudicators, with the new adjudicators, we're seeing now adjournments. We're seeing, we'll have a decision wrote for you in the mail, and then you're still not knowing what's happening. You're still waiting for this stuff to happen in the mail. You see minor errors that are happening on the paperwork, which why can't they inform landlords of those errors prior to the hearing where they can redirect it and fix it in order to have it mediated before we can get to the hearing. So you're not having to go to the hearing, find out it's being dismissed, and have to reserve again and pay more money. And that's where I like to look at the concept of 186. You're looking at $186 for filing. Now you have to do it again. So we have our concept where it's like, it is speeding up, but we have to get the consistency with our adjudicators. And that's why they started off with that Microsoft and the Microsoft versus Zoom. They want to see how the breakout rooms are doing. They want to deal with the concept of tenant activists trying to shut down these hearings, saying very inappropriate things within the chat just so they can indeed that. So they have that problem that they're trying to face. We just had a meeting with the landlord and tenant board as a stakeholder meeting to discuss that pilot program switching over to Zoom. Obviously, we talk about the inconsistency where some adjudicators are like, we want everyone to change their name to guest. And then some guest decides to take their name, their mic off and start blurting out what that in particular tenant should be doing. And the adjudicator is like, hey, who said that? I'm like, well, you just put us all as guests, so we can't even tell you who is out of line here. And that's the concept where, they need to be working on that, but there's so much more rules and procedures that need to be worked on. So my advice to them at the last one saying, listen, we're going to be talking until we're blue in the face of what your problems are and how to address it. We still have backlogs that need to be addressed, and certain applications need to be heard a lot quicker than others. So I would advise them to create that council, create that committee, and create subcommittees on top of that. So you can really narrow down, here are our main issues. You're going to handle this, you're going to handle that, and those teams work on creating that solution that is going to be fair for both landlords and tenants. But for whatever reason, when I was part of that LTB stakeholder meeting, I was a part of the paralegal group. I don't know where the landlords were, or even for the tenants in that matter, but a lot of the paralegals were in that group. And I'm like, they were talking about how they can't represent multiple clients at once unless they have different platforms, and it was really costing their business. And they really want to see in-person hearings held for tenants who are requesting to be in person. I said, that is a trick. That's a way for any tenant to want to prolong that hearing. They would say to fit their accommodations, they want to be in person. It's like, it's so much better. Everyone loves being online so much better because of the concept that you don't have to worry about your babysitter. You don't have to worry about traveling to these locations that are not very close. There is a way. They just have to understand that the number one issue at the landlord and tenant board is non-payment of rent. And you need to address that not only from the attorney generals, we need to address that at the provincial level as well. So they have so much that they're doing, but at least they're listening to us. We finally, after 10 years, you have a seat at the table. And as of recently, I get to say it to everyone on here tonight, is that I'm actually going to be on the subcommittee for the affordable housing and homelessness for the city of Cambridge. I can't tell you what's going to happen there, but at least you know that I'm advocating not only on the provincial level, but definitely on this municipal. And if anyone's interested in trying to find out if your city has a committee or a subcommittee that does this, please, I would love to help out and see what we can do, dig up that committee and how we can get you on there so that we can start having the small landlords' voices on there. And that was that missing piece that they seen is that they don't have it. And we are, a good contributor into providing these affordable units. Because Mandy, do you specialize in getting the duplex conversions happening?
Not with prices the way they are, honestly, right now. No, that's it's kind of something that's been put on the back burner right now. I actually, though, Kayla, have sat on a North Simcoe Working Housing Committee for probably about 6 years until the beginning of COVID. So I was the private sector landlord that would show up and be like, that's great that we're here with the mental health center and, and the this and the addictions and all this kind of stuff. And I would sit there and we need. And I would voice for who I was. And I would be like, well, for what it's worth, this is what my thought would be. This is what my thought would be, or whatever. So I know some people that are sitting on these little subcommittees. It is very good to know what is going on in the community and how you can offer your services or how you can kind of get involved even, just on a small level. No, the type of units I'm creating right now, I like to say they're duplicatable, durable, units for the average family. I mean, we're an average family. We've got a dog. We, we don't clean behind our fridge and our stove all the time. We've got, that's who I rent to. I like to be able to say, what's the broadest type of unit to be able to offer to the most amount of people. So no executive rentals, no short-term rentals, not in my portfolio, just by choice. So I create these units, and one of my partners said to me one time, well, I'd like to see some pictures of some of your properties. And I was like, well, once you've seen a picture of the gray walls and the luxury vinyl plank and the white trim and the white kitchen and the counter, you're going to have seen it all. Right? Like, because one unit looks like all the others. So, there is this durability factor, regardless of the type of units. We've got that, that vinyl, luxury vinyl plank, and we have a lovely gentleman, but he stays at home, and his feet, where he sat and watched his TV, had actually erased the color on this 4-year-old luxury vinyl plank. Nothing wrong with the floor whatsoever. It's perfect. But when he left, he had feet mark of where he just would sit down and stand up and sit down and stand up and, right in that same spot that he watched TV all the time. So, I mean, the type of units you create are the type of product. Yeah. We are a business. Our clients are our tenants. And, if you treat this like a business and you treat your clients and your units, like, how do I not get, there are some times, and recently on one of the groups that I'm part of on Facebook, the city was like, look at this custom door, $4,000, and the tenant moved out and there's a scratch on it. And all these people are like, oh, go after the tenant. And I was like, why the hell did you put a $4,000 custom door on a rental? Not saying that a tenant wouldn't love that, but, you've got the wrong expectation of what people are going to do in your units. And so, as landlords, as rental housing providers, just acknowledge that people are coming in here to live, and they're going to leave their units as if they were lived in. And yes, there's lived in, and then there's garbaged and, pissed in the corner, things like that. And that's not being respectful, obviously. But, the odd wear and tear, if you were to say, do I slam my doors when I'm mad at my 17-year-old? Yep. We've had some light switches that have gotten broken because you leave a room and you bang the light switch. Normal things normal people kind of do, if there is even an idea is normal. So, yeah, it's kind of my share to people is don't have your expectations. Like, don't be disappointed because you've set yourself up too high.
Now, my point for today too is I want to be able to see if you've seen it, because I know my phone is ringing off the hook. So many landlords are doing it in 12s. They're getting out. They're selling their houses, their condos, their townhouses. They're selling at a very, very hot market, and these places are being sold at a high rate, and where I don't see it ever hitting the market again as a rental. So I like to see if like our people are going to be prepared for the type of supply that we're losing through COVID as well. And how that is affecting the market, because they see it being a hot market. But I like to see if we can get some stats on if those properties, how many of them are rental units, because every single rental unit that we had available, why are you leaving? Oh, landlord's selling the place, landlord's selling the place. So you get to see that this is another another consequence based on the government's reaction, inaction, mismanagement. This is where we want to kind of see that the market is definitely changes the prices. Like, we're not touching anything on real estate right now. We're letting it do its thing. We're making sure that we manage it, put some money into our properties, accept anything that comes with wood or a deck that's needed to be evolved right now. But you know what? This is about us connecting. It's about connecting with people like yourself, people who are been in the industry. You know what's to come. You know that we obviously, everyone who's known that there's a rent increase freeze that is happening, which landlords have just noticed that the landlords are getting creative and they're now charging for parking for visitors. So it's like you take away that income. Meanwhile, our taxes are gone up, the utilities have gone up, we have our insurance that needs to be paid, but still no one told the grocery store that they can't raise their food prices, but they came after private landlords because they see us being divided, and we are being divided. The big landlords, the small ones, the good ones, the bad ones, and then we have our tenants, our bad tenants and our good tenants. So I want to be able to tell you guys that we're going to be having a campaign that's going to be coming up in around June, hopefully around the June 1st. We want our landlords to nominate one of your good tenants. So, and this good tenant, based on the nomination, they're going to win about $1,500 towards their rent, so that we're going to help them out. So this is about really showing our appreciation to our good landlords, our good tenants, because without them, you wouldn't have your business, right? You wouldn't be able to thrive, and you wouldn't be able to grow into your rental market. So let's do a shout out in the month of June. We'll have a Google form that you can fill out, and for every tenant that you nominate who is a good tenant that you feel can help be beneficial to get this $1,500, we're also going to give the landlord a ticket. And this ticket is going to be used for our event that we're hosting in October. And this event is going to be online. We're going to have a potential dinner. I know how I'm
that's cool.
Now. And then we're going to be having our elected officials invited to speak, and our regional staff. So we already have the regional Waterloo stating that they're interested in speaking. We're going to have them talk about the issues in housing, the solutions that they feel that they have in progress, so that they can try to address the housing concerns. We're going to talk about government programs that help tenants. We're also going to talk about government programs that can help investors if you want to build or create secondary suites, what that program looks like, and be able to ask them questions and also give feedback. It's going to be a very much of an important event for our landlords to give feedback to our guest speakers. And through that event, we're also, with your tickets that you've been able to obtain from nominating your good tenant, we're also going to be giving out prizes for this event. Everyone's asking us like, oh, you're going to do a conference. I know 2020 just ate it up. We couldn't do our normal conference that we do. So stay tuned, because we're going to be able to come back in 2021 as an online event. Still not taking a chance on if we're going to be able to open up quite yet. So we're going to have that event, and that's where we're going to be working our butts off to make sure that it's something that gives you all the content and the value that I've learned, and I'm going to bring those people to you so that you actually can utilize that through your journey in investing into real estate.
Kayla, and your events are worth like tens of thousands of dollars. If somebody goes and they learn just one little thing about how to offer programs and solutions to a tenant that's falling behind, if they figure out the right way to have a relationship, or to screen a tenant, or to watch for initiatives, or how they can keep up with the changes are going on, so that when they happen to go to the board, they are prepared, whether they hired a paralegal, they're doing it themselves. Like, one little tip that they learn on how to be the best type of rental housing provider or landlord that they can be is worth thousands of dollars these days. So, I mean, the cost of a ticket, the value of being surrounded by other people who also are, putting this, we talk about landlording as the dash of real estate, right? Oh, everybody's excited about buying the property and everybody's excited about what the value is when they go to sell it. If there are a lot of landlords that are selling properties right now, but nobody really talks about the dash. And that's where you come in, and your knowledge of, the Ontario Landlord Watch, or you as a property manager, or the value of working with, a partner or somebody that has the, that level of knowledge around the Ontario Landlord Tenant Board, it's relaxing, it's calming, and it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Look at that. I went from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Definitely won't be those type of prices, because I'm a frugal landlord. I'm cheap too. If I won't pay for it, then that's not our ticket price. But right. I want to make sure that these landlords are prepared. We're going to teach all these landlords to be proactive. We're going to teach them about different things that you never thought of, and not so much as the ball and chain situation. We need to start working ourselves in, dividing ourselves between the good landlords and the bad landlords, and working ourselves into proper communication. I think that's where it's going to come from, because like you said, you have so many sad situations that you could potentially help that person by guiding them to where they can seek help that's coming from the government. But how do you know? I have landlords call me, they're like, how do I meet my MPP? How do I know who my MPP? Can I sit with my MPP? It's like, what? I'm like, yeah, you can sit with your MPP. Like, let's email them right now, right? Like, this is the concept. We need to get that involvement, and we need to get ourselves, we've done so much. We're almost at 6,000 people in the group, and with 2,200 people still waiting to get in. But it's gone to the concept that we've created this community of support and guidance and advocacy, and we're going to be able to start teaching them, if you do this, this is what the landlords are going to do, and this is how it's going to affect your tenants, right? And that's where it is. You keep putting landlord licensing in play. It's all been talked about in Cornwall. It's happening in Barrie. Landlord licensing now is spreading like a wildfire across this province. So we need to start showing about what that looks like, and how it's going to result in the rents increasing, and how that cost will be put onto the tenants, or how it's going to drive away investors from that municipality. And if you don't have the supply, the rent is going to rise even higher. So we have a lot of work that's still to do. But again, we can't just sit back and look at, is the government listening? Is the Landlord and Tenant Board listening? Are these changes happening? When are they going to happen? Even though the Landlord and Tenant Board says that by the end of the year, they hope to have people's hearings dealt with between 4 to 6 weeks from applying. That gives us a lot of hope into what they plan to do, especially with this new online system that the Attorney General is coming out with. But again, can't hold our breath, guys. We've been doing this for 10 years. 10 years. So let's keep looking at different products and different services to help you manage your rental property, to help you deal with the screening. Your screening is going to be the most important. And as much as our heart is in us, and it's who we are, and we're Canadian, and we love it, and we want to help people, we have to understand that you can't help anybody unless you're helping yourself first. So that's why I've been such a huge advocate, and I became the national ambassador to Landlord Credit Bureau, because a lot of people are going to listen to very much negative articles about them, because obviously it's our professional tenants who are writing these type of articles. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, that must be true, because they're trying to discourage landlords from utilizing that. And I get the concept that you want to show the proof, and maybe we can work that into our lease addendums, that we can check your credit twice in a month of a tenancy, so that you can see it improving or you can see it declining, to give that landlords that feeling to know that it actually is affecting their credit. But knowing that we're now being utilized, the landlords are asking to be a part of this service, and the tenants are. The amount of tenants who are calling and wanting to be a part of Landlord Credit Bureau. If I get a tenant that says, I'm a part of Landlord Credit Bureau, that's it. Like, Let's go
We're in.
right at the top of the list. And that's what we need to really try to encourage. So it's more about time consuming, trying to get our new tenants into this program because they don't know what it's like. It's a little scary for them. But in reality, once they see how you're going to start to build your credit a lot faster than having this measly little credit card or a line of credit that your bank won't give you, it's going to be something that's going to be absolutely fantastic for this industry. And it's just a matter of time as long as landlords are sharing that information with other landlords, just like we do now with sharing information about the landlord and tenant board or the RTA. We have to utilize these different products and different services to help us until we get the proper changes when the government finally listens to it, because they are now discussing long-term care facilities. We're not going to get in that tonight because we've already reached our time frame for tonight, but it's going to be unto the conclusion that everyone needs to help each other out, be supportive of one another. We have many different campaigns that are going to be happening, but I'm excited to know that we're going to give $1,500 out to our good tenants, and we're going to be able to host an event to bring that networking, to bring that community back, and bring our elected officials to us. And let's get all the right players at the right table discussing the issues and the solutions from all different levels of government, municipal, regional, and provincial, because this is what it needs to take. And I'll take the initiative, and I'll make sure I get the invitation out there. I'll make sure I call them, and if they better not push me, I'll show up at their house too.
I love I think that's why we do so good, is because your energy, your dedication to us. So on behalf of landlords and rental housing providers, I'll call it Ontario, but I know that your ripple effect of your passion is going to go on a national level. So thank you, Kayla, for the opportunity for me to be able to sit here as a rental housing provider and share with the group tonight.
Now, Mandy, everyone, I know you got lots of guest speakers on your channel and your energy and what you do. I think everyone needs to follow you. How can they follow you?
MandyBrenham.com, solutions-driven property group on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called the 7-Figure Canadian Real Estate Investing Group. So if you're an investor and you're like, hey, I'm an investor and now I'm a landlord, then that I host a show. Kayla, you've been a guest on my show Thursdays at 11 a.m. You'll find me live on Facebook and YouTube. So I'm around. Just put in Mandy Investor and you'll find me.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Mandy. I really enjoyed the conversation with you today. And I'm sure that we're going to have many other people listening in after this is being done and recorded and broadcasted live. And I'm lucky that the kids didn't come in this time. Better get off now before they come.
Thanks so much,
Kayla, for tuning in and watching another Facebook Landlord live chat. Make sure that you're contacting your MPP, voicing your concerns, give them some issues, give them the solutions, and make sure that you're inviting them to our Ontario Landlords Watch event in October. So give them our email address at olwlandlords@gmail.com. And until then, I will be on the group answering your questions and also taking your phone calls as well. Thank you, everyone, for your support, and we will continue to keep advocating for a fair and balanced system for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. Thank you, and have a great night. Happy renting.